What's up? It's your people's champ. Today we're going to go over home front. Okay, how the United States is going to try to supply the Allied powers, some of the dangers across the Atlantic Ocean, and how the U.S. is gearing uh, towards war, and how the U.S. is getting involved. All right, so here you go. Bell ringer for today. Describe women's role in America during World War One. So I'll give you a couple seconds to check that out. If you want to, please pause the video, fill out your answer, and then obviously I'm going to go over here. 3, 2, 1. Okay, there you go. So describe women's role in America during World War One. The biggest thing is that women were finally seeing, occupations, opportunities in the workplace. Okay, working in the industries, the factories. Okay, women were filling roles not on the battlefield near as much, but as nurses, okay, helping these men get back on the battlefield, aiding them, helping them any way they can. After the war, setting up and establishing hospitals, different types of clinics to help these men with PTSD and some of the effects that they faced from World War One and the dangers and the advancements of technology that they witnessed and really just the devastation, the brutality of it. But overall, women, they really gained a step up during this time. And many say, yeah, the progressive era was one of the main reasons why women seen this jump, seen these opportunities during the early 1900s. But realistically, it was World War One. Okay, it was World War One. Women were filling those jobs, filling those industrial occupations to try to really fuel America in this war, help supply the Allied powers, because at this time it was really just America. These European countries couldn't create finalized goods, couldn't promote any type of military effort because a lot of their factories, their businesses were destroyed. And we mentioned before with Great Britain, they're an island, right? They're restricted to what kind of resources they can have. So once Germany really surrounded their island and used the U-boats to destroy any type of resources coming in, they were screwed, right? They were screwed. They couldn't really create any finalized fixed goods or supplies because they had no resources coming in. They're a small island. They're limited to what they have, and they were dependent on their overseas territories. All right, so the U.S., again, because of women's role in society during World War One, we see the United States rising as that industrial power, actually the number one in the world. And from here on out, the rest of the world is going to be dependent on U.S. industry and factory and finalized goods to try to rebuild even after the war. And a big part of that was because of women's role in society. And we see after the war, women's right to vote, 19th Amendment. Okay, that was a big thing. All right, so today, real quick, I just want to talk about actually, I have some vocab terms for you. Just a couple. Where are we at here? We're at the Russian Revolution. Actually, not yet. We'll do that tomorrow, most likely, when we're getting closer towards the end. Okay, so your vocab terms will be due. I'll let you know when your vocab terms are due. I'm thinking maybe Friday, or how about we just do it for Monday because we have your project presentations. Have Monday your vocab terms done and ready to go. All right, so we left off yesterday talking about obviously women and their role in society during World War One, but also the Doughboys, right? The Doughboys. So, like I mentioned before, the U.S. soldiers, they were optimistic about fighting in World War One. They were really excited. They thought it was almost like a game. Their only experience with the war was really just, with any type of war, was the Spanish-American War, and that wasn't much of a war. It really didn't last too long, right? There's not many casualties. They call it a splendid little war because that's what it was. It was a victory for the United States that really promoted them as a world power. But now we see the United States rising even more as this world power after this war. But yeah, the men, they were shocked to see what type of fighting that was ensuing in Europe. And they had no idea of chemical warfare, tanks, airplanes, right? Many different advancements that they've seen in Europe. Okay, you got to think a lot of these men came from rural areas. They didn't even have a tractor, right? They didn't even have a car. Now they go over in Europe, they see airplanes flying over top of their heads with machine gun fire, dropping bombs, chemical warfare, tanks rolling at them, these huge armored vehicles, and the type of weaponry that just amazed them. It was just shocking to say the least. Okay, and there's actually books written about the damages of war and the brutality of it, especially in World War One. I'm sure you guys heard of the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbits, right? The Tolkien, who the author, he saw and witnessed a lot of this battle in World War One, and just kind of related characters off of what was going on during the war and the type of weaponry. It was just something that blew his mind to the point where he created these great stories, which is a unique fact. There you go. Maybe that's an extra credit point. Make sure you're watching these videos. All right, so bloody stalemate. Okay, so we talked about the United States in World War One. Okay, and how women really affected, the war effort, especially for the United States moving forward, and it really benefiting them. But real quick, I hope you guys read page 584 to 589. It's good information about the home front. We talked about the Espionage Sedition Act to try to limit the speech and make sure that there was no attacks on American soil and that there was no uprising or violent rebellions in the U.S. because of this war, obviously with the immigrants groups that we have. So real quick, we talked about Selective Service Act as well. The U.S. needed to try to build a strong land military, and that was needed. One of the main things, though, because the U.S. is getting involved here, there need to be some sort of push in order to try to promote this strong military and put all the industries directed towards creating this strong military. No longer can we just create peacetime products, right? We need to try to build tanks and weapons and supplies. And on page 587, please check that out. It's called Federal Mobilization Agencies. So we see the War Industries Board just trying to maximize production and increase efficiency in order to try to create more supplies. Railroad Administration. Okay, modernize equipment, increase operating efficiency, obviously getting resources from our rural areas to these industrial factories and businesses in order to try to make supplies, war armaments. So all those things with the Gilded Age, right, with Cornelius Vanderbilt creating these railroads we mentioned and talked about before in chapter 1, this is being increased even more now during wartime. Okay, and obviously afterwards people can use it just for transportation purposes. All right, Food Administration. We talked about that in chapter 1, the Progressive Era. So with agricultural production, promoting food conservation and rationing, especially in the U.S. for these people, these citizens, like, hey, eat everything on your plate. If you don't, it's wasteful. This could go towards, the war effort, supplying our soldiers overseas. And I think that's very important, especially when you see propaganda pictures like which we talked about last week of trying to instill these thoughts into people's minds to make sure that they are not wasteful with their food and growing as much crops as possible to help our war supply and our soldiers overseas. And most important, Great Britain. Okay, that's where it came from the most, where we tried to instill these agricultural ideas and growing products and crops, because Great Britain's an island, right? They don't have anything. Once Germany kind of surrounded them with U-boats, destroyed any ships coming in, they were done for. They needed food, and there was a lot of famine and people dying because they had low food supplies in Great Britain because Germany constricted them. They cut off their supply. Fuel administration. So increased production of coal and oil and maintain conservation with fuel obviously in the United States. And innovations as daylight savings. Okay, that's pretty cool stuff right there. In order to try to almost put a curfew, make sure that people aren't driving around at night, only if it's needed for obviously supplies and keeping industries promoting for the war. Keep people at home so they're not burning up fuel to save that and preserve it for the troops overseas. All right, the National War Labor Board. All right, cooperation between industry management, labor unions, act as a mediator to prevent and quickly settle disputes. So they wanted to try to really establish a way of really changing industries. Let's say they're making automobiles and cars, to try to make them into tanks, airplanes, okay, or making them into war vehicles, really armored vehicles, right? And finally, Committee on Public Information, so providing propaganda, right? Trying to persuade people to think about the war effort a little bit more and increase people's thoughts and really just promote some sort of belief that these Americans can do something to help these soldiers overseas, and really dehumanizing the enemy, which we talked about, creating food supplies, right? Victory gardens, you name it. There's many instances where propaganda was used. But check out 587. You might see some of those. Okay, although they're not vocab terms, most of them, you might see those coming up on a quiz or a test. So check that out. That's very important. All right, real quick, the convoy, the convoy system here. So when the U.S. enters the war in spring 1917, we know that was a bloody stalemate. Okay, trench warfare. There wasn't really much movement. It was very stagnant. Okay, they were just waiting for the opposition to cross no man's land, which didn't happen too much because we know that's suicide, right? Great Britain was going through a lot of struggles. Germany restricted any types of supplies coming into the island. They were low on food, low on supplies. They couldn't help their soldiers fighting in France and in Germany and in Europe, right? So it was needed that the U.S. came and entered the war for Great Britain. And we talked about some conspiracy theories, right, with the Lusitania and the Zimmerman note. Obviously, Great Britain needed the U.S. to get involved, right, because they were restricted to what they had. They were limited, and they needed the United States to finally push that edge in the war in Europe. All right, so Americans use a convoy system, get supplies to Europe. That was the biggest danger, right, with the Lusitania. All right, these U-boats. Okay, how can we get across the Atlantic Ocean and try to supply the Allied powers without getting destroyed by these submarines, these German U-boats? And that was a huge danger for many Americans as they're traveling across the Atlantic. How do we avoid it, right? This is going to be a reoccurring issue when we get to World War II. Same thing. How do we try to avoid these submarines? At this time in World War I, radar was just developing. Okay, it was hard to depict and see where these U-boats were underwater. And depth charges, same thing. Yeah, they had them, but not effective, not in abundance. So to try to target these U-boats, hard to do. So they needed fast-moving ships to try to avoid any type of torpedoes or fire against or from these U-boats or these submarines. And as you can see right here, this picture, with the convoy system to try to avoid any types of attacks by U-boats, a lot of times they would move in different stagnant types of, move in different zigzags in a way, okay? And try to avoid any type of fire from a U-boat because U-boats are very slow underwater, and it's hard for them to turn and manage around and move in a different direction to try to maybe target a supply ship of the United States, okay? Because they're limited to different types of movements. So the only way to try to avoid it is move in zigzags and move at a fast rate. And with the convoy system, you go in groupings, as you can see here in the left picture. They try to really help and aid each other out, just in case if there is ever an attack on a ship or a battleship, okay, or a supply ship. Then they can maybe get the supplies and move it to another ship and the people and save them as they're going across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, and there's just more targets, right? More targets. It's what should the U-boat target? Okay, what should they go after? It was very hard for them to do that. But the zigzags definitely helped out a lot in these fast-moving ships to try to avoid any type of destruction from these submarines or U-boats. That was a way around it. I know it's not much. You don't think it's much, but it actually helped and benefited the Allied powers a lot. Okay, just moving in zigzags. It's way like an alligator, right? If that's the thing to do. If an alligator's chasing you because they have those short legs, they can move fast in one direction really quick. But once you get them moving in different angles and different ways and then different, I guess you could say, routes, right? Moving side to side, he can't move near as fast. Same with the submarine. All right, yep. So there we go. We're going to talk about the Russian Revolution tomorrow. So as the United States is joining, we're going to talk how Russia's leaving the war, not helping the Allied powers that much. But hey, with the U.S. joining, that's a huge benefit for the Western Front. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for today. Just a reminder, make sure you guys read over page 584 to 589. Okay, it talks about the home front. There's a couple terms here I want you to know. Again, they might not be in your vocab, but you'll see them on the quiz. And then make sure you remember propaganda, Selective Service Act, okay, the Espionage Sedition Act, causing many issues, right, in the United States, that Espionage and Sedition Act. And on 588, I think there's a pretty cool court case describing how that caused issues, more than just Shank versus the U.S., right, which we discussed and went over. Reminder, your project presentations are Friday, so please record them. A lot of people send me the slides. That's great. But if you record it, all you have to do is send me a link to your video, okay? Just like a YouTube video, or if you just want to send a video, that's fine. Again, I can see your presentation in the video, so there's no need to really send your slides with it. But if you want to, that's fine. Up to you. I'll make the post on Friday, so maybe tomorrow I'll put it up for Friday. You'll see it, but just attach that on there if you're done already. That's great. Okay, and then I just need you to present it, right? So just read over it. You don't have to be in the video. I actually prefer you not to be in the video. So just read over your slides, present it like you would, and then just send that over, okay, on Friday's announcement, Friday's assignment. And I guess I'll have that due for Monday. I mean, I would like to do it for Friday. If you get it posted right on Friday, that'd be great. Then I can get your grades in right away. But obviously, I can't force you to do things like 24 hours over the weekend. So make sure you try to have that done. All right, that's all I have. Take care. Have a good one. Remember, be safe. Okay, I miss you guys all here. Take care and see you later.